1,700 cases of Alzheimer's, dementia are being diagnosed every week. Eeh. I've got a friend and she works with Alzheimer's Australia. She said, I have 20 patients in their 40s. Ooh, that hurts to hear that. I don't know anyone who wants to get that. I'm a Bible student. I've read the Bible. I haven't read about it in the Bible. Have you? No, it's a fairly recent phenomenon and one of the contributing factors. And that's what you'll find as we study different things this week, is it's not just one thing, and it's not just one thing. So you might notice I've got a dent in my cheek. Well, it wasn't a whole lot of things that caused that. I just crashed. I just crashed on the bridge. I'm off in La La Land riding my bicycle. My wheel got caught and over I went. Real easy. Dent is caused by a crash, but it's rarely that easy. It's rarely that easy. It's often a bit of this, and a bit of that, and a bit of that, and then the timing. What is it? The devil's in the detail, and the delight's also in the detail. It could be a little bit of this. And you've probably heard the saying, the straw that broke the camel's back, a piece of straw can't break a camel's back, but on top of a whole lot of other things, it can certainly tip the scale. And that's often the case with most problems that people have. That's why you're the best doctor. Because you know your history, you know what you've been through, you know how you feel. Epithalamin increases learning capacity. Don't we love this one? Because we should ever be learning new things right up until the day we die. And when we go to bed in these hours, it causes a release of epithalamin, which increases learning capacity. So when I say to the teachers, can you tell the kids that got a late night? They say, oh yes. They're not only a little bit more irritable, but they can't seem to grasp the concept. They can't seem to retain the concept. I said, well, now you can say to them, you didn't get your epithalamin last night, did you? And we should ever be learning more things. You go to bed early, it will help to consolidate what you learn in your brain and help you with the understanding. Epithalamin also slows down aging, and everyone over the age of 25 likes that one. And the last one is arginine vasotocin. And arginine vasotocin is a hormone that puts us into a deep sleep. A lot of people that can't sleep think if they go to bed later, they're more likely to fall into a deep sleep, but actually the opposite's true. The earlier you go to sleep, the more likely you are to fall into a deep sleep because of arginine vasotocin. But I think one of the most exciting things about arginine vasotocin is that it's our natural painkiller. So my husband, he's just been in Thailand, and he had to have a tooth out. And instead of paying $800 in Australia, he can pay $100 in Thailand. I know a lot of Australians go to Thailand to have their teeth work done. And the dentist said, whoa, this tooth, yes, it's breaking down, it needs to come, but it has 3 roots, all going in different directions. So what they had to do, they had to spend an hour on this, and yes, aren't we thankful for painkillers, the local anaesthetic. He had to cut his skin, he had to cut, anyway, big one. And then he gave him antibiotics and he gave him painkillers, and he said, no, I won't use them. And he insisted he take them, but the packets haven't been opened. My husband's wonder cure is this: hot shower, go to bed. He was in a lot of pain, but he had his hot shower, hydrotherapy. We'll be looking at that a little bit more in natural treatments. And he went to bed and he slept solid all night. And I believe one of the reasons he did was arginine vasotocin. He was in bed by 7 o'clock. That's very unusual, but he was in pain. And he slept the whole night long because of his release of arginine vasotocin. And when he woke up in the morning, the pain had gone from 8 out of 10 to about a 3 out of 10. What an incredible body we live in, with this inbuilt ability to heal itself. Now, my husband hates medication, but he recognises, we all do, that in a crisis it may be necessary. But he didn't need it at all. He used his natural remedy, hot shower, and go to bed. But the next day he needed to do this. He needed to exercise. And the reason he needed to exercise, so that he could access arginine vasotocin the next night. See, when you do use arginine vasotocin, and of course it's not a conscious use, your body will naturally release it from your pineal gland in those night hours if you need it. But it leaves a waste. And if that waste is still remnant in the body the next night, it won't release another dose. So we need to exercise in the day, because when you're moving in the day, when you're exercising in the day, you start to perspire, and that's causing a release of certain wastes in the body. Tonight I'm going to be looking at detoxification. We're going to look at the process. It's an amazing process how the body eliminates environmental poisons out of our body. So the next night he slept well again. And it's now, I think, the 4th day. He was flying to Australia, and the doctor said, no, I don't want to take the stitches out until they've been there a week. Michael said, well, I'm flying home. So he went in, and the doctor could not believe the healing that had already happened. We live in a body that has an inbuilt ability to heal itself. Tiny little word here, but a very important one. If you give it the right conditions. And I wouldn't be surprised if he'd taken any medication that it would have actually interfered with the healing process. Yes, in a crisis, medication may play a role, but our body's designed to heal itself, and unfortunately this medication for every little bits and piece, it's sort of spilled out, hasn't it, into everyday life. In fact, I think that's why you're here. You want to know, what can I do to get the most out of this body? So arginine vasotocin is our natural painkiller. Arginine vasotocin also puts us into a deep sleep. It was probably looking at 100 years ago now, medicine began to do a lot of research on sleep, because people were starting to get sleep problems with the electric light coming. In fact, when I was at Niagara Falls yesterday, I saw that big statue of Tesla and how he set up, I think it was the late 1800s, late 1800s, this huge hydroelectric system. So it's over 100 years ago since we've had this electric light. And that's when people started to have sleep problems. And I think you'll agree with me, that's got something to do with it. When you realise it's the light and dark signals that come through the eyes to the pineal gland, which is giving messages through. And so what they discovered with sleep, they started to do experiments on rats, because rats have a body that runs very similar to ours. And then they started to do on people. In fact, one of the researchers even had his little daughter all electrode up at night. And what they found was that there were periods of the night where the eyes were flickering, even though the lid was closed. And they discovered that when the eyes flickered, the brain was busy. And then there were periods of time where the eye was fairly still, and that's when the brain was relatively still. And what they called the busy time is rapid eye movement, and the non-busy time was non-rapid eye movement. And they discovered that they seem to go in 90-minute cycles. And what happens in non-rapid eye movement time, there's a courier service. So what do we mean by a courier service? Well, let's look at the brain. This is the brain from side on. And there's a little gland here, it's called the hippocampus, and that's our short-term memory unit. So our short-term memory unit is everything you're learning today is being stored in the hippocampus. But while we sleep, in non-rapid eye movement time, there's a courier service that takes the memories up to the long-term memory unit. What else happens in non-rapid eye movement time is there's a cleaning system. I think it's fairly similar to what we see in the streets of the cities at night. There's the street cleaners come out. And what they discovered is the brain cells shrink up, allowing for more water or fluid around the nerve cell, allowing for the cleaning system. So what's this cleaning up? It's cleaning up waste from neuronal activity. It's cleaning up waste from the combustion of glucose and oxygen in the cell. But it also has the ability to clean up negative emotions. Isn't that fascinating? So this cleaning system is happening in non-rapid eye movement time. In rapid eye movement time, there's a filing system. I found it fascinating when I read Dr. Matthew Walker's book, Why We Sleep, where he describes a lot of the research that was done. He's an atheist, and in his book he says it's almost as if sleep has an intelligence. And if he was talking to me, I'd say, sleep does have an intelligence, mate. We were created in the image of God, and God is a God of order. He's a God of peace. And so when these memories are filed, they're not filed in any old haphazard way. They're filed in a certain order. I remember back in my late teens working as a psychiatric nurse, we learnt that nerves that lie together fire together. And this is exactly what Matthew Walker found. All the negative memories are put together, and all the positive memories are put together. And they even seem to be filed in certain subjects. Have you noticed when something goes wrong in your life, a whole lot of other memories come up of things going wrong? But have you noticed when everything's going wonderful, you just think of all the wonderful things? That's because nerves that lie together fire together. Now this can be very helpful if you're going through a tough time and a whole lot of other tough memories come up. You can look at that and say, hey, I know what's going on here. My nerves that lie together fire together. Reject, reject. I'm going to go to the positive and pull up some of those. So there's a filing system that happens in rapid eye movement time. Also dreaming, and Dr. Matthew Walker and all the research that he looked at, they came to the conclusion that the dreaming is designed to help with the filing. Have you noticed all the weird and wonderful things you dream? You're not alone. Our reason, intellect and judgment is asleep in dreaming time, so our board of senses is not there to say, no, that's a bit ridiculous. All sorts of ridiculous things come up. It appears that the dreaming is helping the brain know how to file. This is also where the consolidation of things we've learnt through the day happens. A confirming and a consolidation and a settling in of the information that came in. This is also where the inventions take place. So now I want to show you how they work together in the night hours. Dr. Matthew Walker came to the conclusion, and he did not like this conclusion. He came to the conclusion that we need 8 hours sleep a night. Notice what his response was? He did not like it. He was very much hoping that 6 hours would do. 8. It has to be 8. It has to be 8 for all the processes that happen in the night. They need that time to be able to happen. So we can do maybe summertime 10 to 6. My favourite's 9 to 5. At a push, it could be 8 to 4. I like God's perfect mathematical formula. 8 hours to play, 8 hours to work. Sorry, I got that the wrong way. 8 hours to work, 8 hours to play, 8 hours to sleep. So let's have a look. Let's do the 9 to 5 and look at how they work together. So 9 to 10:30 is the first time. So in non-rapid eye movement, time is the most active in the early night. So 80% of the activity between 9 and 10:30 is non-rapid eye movement. Rapid eye movement, it sits at 20%. As the night wears on, we are now up to 10:30 to midnight. And 10:30 to midnight, 60% non-rapid and 40% rapid. And then right in the very middle part of the night, which is 12 midnight to 1:30 a.m., it's 50-50. Moving on through the night, the next hour and a half is 1:30 to 3 a.m. 1:30 to 3 a.m., we've got 40% non-rapid and 60% rapid. And in the last section of the night, 3 to 5, 20% non-rapid and 80% rapid. This information explains so much. This information explains why they have discovered that people who die, they've done postmortems on them with Alzheimer's dementia, the front part of their brain is built up with calcified deposits. And they were puzzled as they're called amylopectin plaques, these calcified deposits. So what happens in the front part of the brain? So this front part of the brain here, this is where our reasoning powers reside. This is where judgment takes place. This is where our intellect is. And this is also where I call it the most wonderful gift that I think God gave to man. See, we were created to be free moral agents. This is the will. This is where we make our decisions. So when someone has Alzheimer's and dementia, how's their reason, judgment and intellect? Not well, not there, lights are on, but no one's home. And yet it's right here that these little calcified deposits build up. Now I want to have a look at one of your presidents in past history, Ronald Reagan. Now he claimed that he only needed 5 hours sleep a night. How did he spend the last 20 years of his life? With severe Alzheimer's dementia. And also in Britain, Margaret Thatcher, brilliant woman. Her brilliancy was seen when she was even a child. How did she spend the last 20 years of her life? Same. And what did she say when still Prime Minister? I only need 5 hours of sleep. And I don't think that was 5 p.m. to 10 p.m. Do you? No. This is midnight, 1, 2 a.m. Can you see what they were missing out on? They were missing out on the cleaning system. If we are asleep in these hours every night, the cleaning system is activated, and guess what it does? Now that's enough to get us all to bed earlier, isn't it? Now this is not the only contributing factor with Alzheimer's, but it certainly is a contributing factor. When you consider the Bible has no record of Alzheimer's, when you consider that it was very rare 150 years ago, people are staying awake when they should be asleep. That's part of the problem. Another part of the problem is lack of sunshine. Lack of sunshine, because sunshine through the day stimulates the pineal gland to release more effectively in the night. Remember, it's the light and dark signals that come through. Water. These hormones need water, or they're not made properly. We should be having 8-ounce glasses every day. Sleep. We need to be sleeping in these hours. The problem today is, one of them has to do with sunshine. Sunshine is high in blue light. And there's a receptor site on the retina for just blue light. And that blue light, when we're getting adequate amounts of blue light, which we are when we're outside in the day. I don't suggest you look at the sun, but just being outside, you're getting it. They have found that it improves tactical reasoning, the ability to solve mathematical problems. You see, melanopsin is the receptor site on the retina for blue light, and it's not involved in sight, it's involved in brain function. The problem is, when you look at your phone or iPad or computer, something close, it's giving off a form of blue light. Now, it's not the same as the blue light from the sunlight, but it's similar enough that if you look at your phone in the middle of the night, you know what the message is? Daytime, wake up. In fact, if you can't sleep and you look at your phone, I can assure you now, you won't go back to sleep. You won't go back to sleep very easily. Sleep is vital in these hours. Trust in divine power, or trust in God. Worry, stress, anxiety has the ability to keep us awake. And in Isaiah 26, verse 3, the Bible says that God will keep him in perfect peace when our mind is stayed upon God, because we trust in God. And perfect peace allows that person to drift into a lovely sleep. If you can't sleep and you get annoyed with the fact that you can't sleep, I can guarantee you won't sleep. But the Bible says in 1 Thessalonians 5:18, in everything give thanks. So if you can't sleep, you lie there and you say, thank you so much, Father in heaven, that I can't sleep. Now I can talk to you. Now I can lie here and list all the things that I can be thankful for. One lady said, I can't sleep, I can't sleep, I can't sleep. I said, don't say that anymore. She said, why not? I said, because every cell in your body is listening. And you know what it says? Looks like we can't sleep. She said, well, what'll I say? I'm going to try. I'm going to get there. That's trust. Trust. You might not be able to sleep now, but you're going to get there. My daughter Emma, when she was 5, she said, Mum, I'm going to grow up in a minute. Now, it took her more than a minute. She had great faith. It took her another 10 years. And that's what natural healing requires, us to be patient and have faith. We're going to get there. We will get there. In Hebrews chapter 11, verse 1, the Bible says, faith is the substance of things hoped for. It's the evidence of things not seen. If you can see it, it's not faith. And faith and hope are inseparable companions. In fact, hope sees the invisible, feels the intangible, and achieves the impossible. If you can't sleep, I've got some good news. You'll get there. You'll get there. But we must give our body the right conditions. And one is abstain. What's abstain? Stop. What interferes with sleep? This may surprise you, and it may not. Alcohol. What alcohol does, it might put you to sleep, but you're going to wake with half-charged batteries, because 42% reduction in the output of the pineal gland secretions if someone goes to sleep under the influence of alcohol. Caffeine, I think most people realise if they have coffee in the afternoon, they're going to struggle with sleep. In fact, caffeine blocks the release of this for 5 hours. Whoa. So these things must stop. And the next one might very much surprise you, sleeping tablets. Eesh. Sleeping tablets, and that's what Dr. Matthew Walker, he's a neurologist. He said sleeping tablets do not give quality sleep. So they're actually not the answer. What's the answer? The answer is stop the alcohol, stop the caffeine, inhale through the nose. This is a really good one. In Genesis 2, verse 7, the Bible says, God formed man from the dust of the ground, breathed into his nostrils. Did everyone catch that? Not mouth. Breathed into his nostrils the breath of life. He became a living soul. We should be breathing in and out through our nose. Well, how do you know what you're doing when you're asleep? Well, the good news is you can buy mouth tape. Now, so you don't wake up in the middle of the night thinking you're half dying. What you can do is you can put the mouth tape under your nose and to your chin, so there is a little bit of a window there. And wear it for an hour a day for 7 days and then sleep with it overnight. By the 7th day, you'll have a pathway in your brain that says it's all right. We know what this is. It's mouth tape. Do you know, most snoring would stop. Sleep apnea machines would drastically be phased out. And as you will find out when we look at the heart, blood pressure comes down. That's exciting. Nutrition. We should be eating food that is high in fibre, great proteins, good fats. We'll be exploring that in more detail. Moderation. There's a time to eat your largest meal and there's a time not to. And the time not to is just before you go to bed. Because when you lie down to sleep, your stomach wants to sleep. But it cannot sleep if there's a big meal in the stomach. What's the old saying? We should be eating breakfast like a king, lunch like a queen, and tea like, or you say supper like a pauper. One lady said, what do paupers eat? I said, sometimes nothing. To be able to go without an evening meal, we need to be eating breakfast like a king. One lady said to me, I found the best time was when the kids get home from school. I have the main meal ready for them. And are they hungry then? Oh, they're very hungry. So it's a matter, and we'll be looking at this in more detail as we go through the week. You just got to find out what works for you because you're the doctor. If it works, do it. If it doesn't, keep adjusting till it does. And it is in this way that the Sustain Me principles help for better sleep. Cognitive behavioural therapy plays a role too, and that is, yeah, I'm going to sleep, I'm going to get there. If you say you can, you will. If you say you can't, you're right. You won't. Every cell in the body is affected by the brain. What about herbs? There are herbs that will help sleep. Valerian is one. Valerian is not a very nice tasting herb, but you can get it in tablet form or tincture form. Chamomile's a very well-known one, and it's not as strong as valerian, but it is a mild tranquilizer. Some people have found melatonin supplements have helped, and some people have found that magnesium helps. Magnesium is a muscle relaxant. So it's a matter of working out what works well for you. But as you can see, we need sleep. And there's much we can do to encourage that. Before we have a break, one more thing with abstain. I'm surprised, and I know that someone has made millions out of the chemical fabric called polyester. And when I go to New Zealand and Ireland and I hear that the woolen farmers are burning their wool, yes, because everyone's buying these cheap chemical fabrics. It's, yes, mercy. And I was talking to Bev about getting sheets because we like cotton sheets. She said it's almost impossible to buy them. Do you know, if every single person in this room refused to buy any more polyester and started to buy cotton, started to buy linen, started to buy the natural fabrics. We, the consumer, have power. We can change that around. I'm very fussy as to where my dollar goes. Only into natural fibre. That can make a difference with sleep. When you're sleeping with technology all around, with chemical fabrics in your nightwear, in your bedding, that can interfere with proper sleep because it does, you can't see it, but it changes the air. So technology should be out of the bedroom, ideally go to natural fibre. Jess and I are sleeping so well, we've got feather quilts. Do you remember them? Feather quilts, we've got cotton. Very nice. And we can open our windows. I can't believe how many places we stay. I don't think the windows have ever been opened. In Australia, we live with the elements. If it's cold, we just put a woolly jumper on. If it's hot, we put the fan on and open the windows. But I don't think so much out in the country, but definitely in the city, just the air conditioning's on the whole time. We're going to have a break now. You need a rest after this information. And when we come back, we're going to have a look at a first aid kit for the home. Welcome back, everyone. Welcome back, welcome back, welcome back. Thank you, thank you. So now we're going to look at the ultimate first aid kit. Because stuff happens, doesn't it? And I lived in a rainforest for 12 years with my 6 children, and guess what? Stuff happens. And we were an hour from the town, and I'm so very glad we're from an hour from town now. You see, my first daughter, when she had an earache, we weren't up in the rainforest. Well, I went straight to where we were taught to go, to the doctor who gave her antibiotics. 6 weeks later and 4 courses of antibiotics later, the earache comes back. And what's the definition of insanity? To do what you've always done and expect different results. I remember very keenly how I felt. So frustrated. I don't want to give my child any more drugs. I don't want my child to go blind because that's what you're told. Eh? If you don't do something, they'll go blind. It's like the latest. Have you heard the latest? Strep throat. You heard that one? Now, when I was a little girl, you know what it was called? Sore throat. These names they come up with. Do you know Psalm 146 verse 3 says, "Put not your trust in princes." Who are the princes? The authorities in the field, yeah? The authorities in government, the authorities in medicine, the authorities in nutrition. Do you know what the Bible says? Put not your trust in them. It doesn't mean you don't go and get an opinion, but you have to remember that's what it is, an opinion. And what can you do with that opinion? You can take it or leave it, because God's government is a government of freedom, and freedom is based on free choice. And as Nelson Mandela said, I am the captain of my ship. I'm the master of my destiny. I'm the one that chooses what I do and what I do not. But our choices are made according to information. And at the age of 24, I didn't have any information other than when you get sick, you go to the doctor. This was a painful experience for me, and really and truly, that experience and that feeling that I had is why I do what I do today. Because what we need is information. Amen. When you have that information, then you can make your choices. So if you do go to a prince, and the prince says, you've got this, you've got to take this, you know what you say? Thank you so much for your opinion. Got that? Because that's what it is. I'll seriously consider it. And when you leave, you might say, don't call me, I'll call you. Because you are employing him or her to do you a service. I'm so glad that I know exactly what to do when there's an earache. It's a cooked onion poultice on the ear. So when my second child got an earache, about 2 years after this first experience, I did not go to the doctor. I did not tell anyone, because everyone pressures you. Should go blind? Or, no, not blind. Deaf. I went to the old lady next door. I'm 25, she's 85. What did your mother do when you were a little girl? She said, Mum would steam up an onion on the stove. I did. James slept for 2 hours. I don't think he's ever had another earache. What a difference. 6 weeks, 4 courses of antibiotics, a steamed onion on the ear where he slept for 2 hours. No more. The fact is, we live in a body that was designed to heal itself. And that healing process is actually phenomenal. And I think I'm going to look at it in detail on Saturday morning when we go to the immune system. My sister's a senior science teacher. And when she teaches her kids the immune system, she ends by saying, see, the body was designed to heal itself. I don't think most kids are told that. Do you know what the mother's told if the child has strep throat? You've got to take antibiotics, or it's going to go to the lungs, it's going to go to the brains. Did you hear that? So why does she do it? She does it because of fear. We should never make a decision on fear. We should make a decision on this one, facts. It's like one lady, she said, her doctor said to her, "You've got this, you've got 3 months to live." She said, "You're not God. Only God knows how long I've got." Got that? Because sometimes they get it wrong. We should be making a decision on facts, not fear. And in 2 Timothy 1 verse 7, God said, "I've not given you the spirit of fear, but of power." What's power? Isn't knowledge power? But of power, love, and a sound mind. You know what a sound mind does? Weighs up the pros and the cons. It has a look at the situation. And when a child is sick, when someone with you is sick, sometimes through fear, a decision can be made. People can be called that actually there is no need. And if you talk to any paramedic, you know what the first thing they do in a situation? Calm. Isn't calm the opposite to fear? You have got time to quickly assess the situation, weigh up the pros and the cons. But it's a good idea to have a first aid kit. And a first aid kit is something you reach for if there's a bee sting, if there's a wasp bite, if there's a cut, if there's a whatever it may be. And I can remember being in a meeting at the retreat that we were at when Michael and I first married 28 years ago. And I saw my son Peter, who was about 10, going. And I said to Jessica, my daughter, I said, "Oh, go and see what Peter wants." And I didn't hear a thing, so I thought, "Oh, everything's okay." You know, what's the old saying? No news is good news. And when I came back up about half an hour later, there's the youngest, William, who was about 6 or 7, with tear-stained face, with a hand like this, and it had been a lot of bleeding, but you know, the kids had dealt with it. Do you know one of the best things to stop bleeding is cayenne pepper? Whoa. Now, won't that hurt? Well, it's already hurting. It doesn't really hurt much more. Cayenne pepper. Cayenne pepper is a remarkable herb. Remember Psalm 104 verse 14, the Bible says that God gave herbs for the service of man. And I'm about to show you how cayenne pepper serves you. How does it serve you? If it touches any part of the body that's bleeding, it'll constrict the blood vessels. It'll seal them. And what had happened with Peter and William? Peter had a machete and he was cutting down the old banana plants. And William was coming in and grabbing them and putting them aside to be taken to the compost bin. And William thought Peter had finished. And he went in as the knife came down and cut across three of his fingers. Anyway, we just sprinkled cayenne pepper into it. Because you know what cayenne pepper will do? It'll seal it. And the bleeding stopped. And I think they got a fruit juice ice block out of the freezer and gave it to him to suck. That helped. That's it. So my kids were brought up with this. With this. And so whenever there's a crisis, they don't think doctor, they don't think ambulance, because we've got all these little tips up our sleeve, and one is cayenne pepper. And guess what I travel with? Cayenne pepper.
Do you need to do anything for infection? We had the same.
Aha! Infection. What is infection? It's actually the team in your body coming in to clean it up. And do you know what that pus is? Your dead neutrophils. They're your white blood cells. And if there's dirt in there, yeah, the neutrophils will come along, so you clean it out. But cayenne pepper's very good at doing that. Very good at doing that. The first thing is always to clean a wound. That's common sense, isn't it? Put under the tap. Put under the tap and get the bits of dirt, get the bits of whatever out of there. And if pus happens the next day, there's your white blood cells. They're doing a great job. But you've got to move it aside, you've got to move it on, and sometimes a grated potato poultice put it on, will pull it out, but it will work with that. And that's how come I raised, after this first experience, well, Michael and I married 28 years ago, he had 2, I had 6. We raised 8 children without antibiotics, and they're all still alive. Got that? They're all still alive, and we've got 25 grandchildren, and they're all still alive too. Because the body's been designed to heal itself. And even with an infection, you know what we should be asking? Why is it there? Do we need to clean it up? Because that's what that pus is. It's just your white blood cells cleaning up the place. And sometimes when there's an injury, it's important to get fresh blood in and the old blood out. And that's where your contrast hot and cold baths can do a great job at that. So cayenne pepper will seal any bleeding in the body. It'll even heal a stomach ulcer. Quite incredible, because that's what it does. It has a sealing effect on bleeding blood vessels. But it does something else. In fact, it does many things. So I was called to a cooking class at one of our retreats a few years ago now. Ladies just had a heart attack. So I went running down. It's important to keep fit. I was there in a couple of minutes. The lady's lying on the ground. She's 85. Her husband said she had a couple of these that year. And a guy was holding her pulse, and he said, "The pulse is very faint." All the blood had gone out of her face. I said, "Quick, cayenne pepper." I got, I don't know what, in a crisis you're moving fast, I think about a half a teaspoon, shoved it into her mouth. She was sort of half conscious, gave her a bit of water and she could drink a bit. And the guy holding the pulse, it must have been about 1.5 minutes, he yelled out, "The pulse is strong." And all the colour came back into her face. And she sat up and said, "What happened?" And there was about 15 people in the cooking class, and they're going, "Whoa." And I said, "No, it's not me, it's the cayenne pepper." We sold out of cayenne pepper that program. Quite incredible. So what did it do then? It did something that seems opposite what I just told you with the bleeding. It's a vasodilator. What's a vasodilator? Vaso is your blood vessels. Dilator means opens them. It's a vasodilator. What also effect it has is to thin the blood. And that's why that lady came around. And that's why the guy holding her wrist said the pulse is strong. So what the cayenne pepper did, when it was in the mouth, it's immediately, the sublingual glands take it up, it's immediately into the bloodstream, takes 1 minute for 1 drop of blood to go around your whole body. So very quickly it's going around, opening up the blood vessels, causing the blood to start moving through the body. It's a vasodilator, it thins the blood, but it also strengthens the arterial wall. In fact, I think you'll agree with me, we've almost got our first aid kit in one. Strengthens blood vessel walls. So it's a great herb for the heart. So whether it be stroke, whether it be cardiovascular disease, whatever it is, it has a powerful effect. Yeah?
Does it kill, like if you eat it? Like I eat a lot of
It certainly can. I think if you're taking it, for medicinally. So what they put people on if they've had a heart attack or a stroke, they put them on aspirin. Now aspirin has 3 side effects: causes stomach bleeds, brain bleeds, and eye bleeds. So it is actually not a safe drug, and it is a drug, whereas this herb is very safe. And I've also come across people who've been on the other one called Wolfrin, which is rat poison, in case you didn't know. And one man came to me, he had blood dripping out of his nose, he was bruised all over his body, he was on too much. You see, drugs are like robots. They just come into your body and they said, get out of my way, I've got a job to do whether you need it or not. So he was on too much and it was just causing bleeding everywhere. In fact, if he was to have an operation, he has to stop that 1 week before the operation. Otherwise, as soon as they cut him, he'll just bleed to death. Whereas cayenne pepper, there's a book called Back to Eden by Jethro Kloss. It was written, I think, about 100 years ago. We call it the Bible on herbs. He devotes half a page to every herb, except for cayenne pepper. 10 pages to cayenne pepper. He likes cayenne pepper. And he quotes 2 doctors in his paper. One says it will never cause a lesion. Do you know what that means? It will never cause a wound, ever. Because it's not a nervous system stimulant, it's a blood stimulant. That's the difference. It stimulates blood. The other doctor says it's impossible to abuse it. You hear that? Do you know what that means? You could take a bucket a day and it will not hurt you, but I don't know anyone who takes a bucket a day. It's an illustration, a beautiful illustration of herbs. Psalm 104 verse 14, God gave herbs for the service of man. So if the cayenne pepper comes into your body and there's bleeding anywhere, it'll seal it. But if the blood vessels need to be dilated, it'll dilate. That's what herbs do. Medicine calls it synergism. And so in your first aid kit, please have a little bottle of cayenne pepper. The brighter and the redder, usually the fresher it is. And the question is often asked, well, what strength do you use? Well, we have one that someone gave me a couple of weeks ago, and it's 160 heat units. I tell you, it blows the top of your head off. Whoa. Well, you do not need very much of that. So obviously, the stronger the heat unit, the less you need to use. And when the heat unit is not as strong, but you know yourself, remember, you're the doctor, you listen. You listen to what your body says. What about in capsule form? You can take it in capsule form if you struggle with the heat of it. But I think it's nice to take it mouth form because it allows you to gauge, allows you to touch it. But I remember my son William had a cold once, and you know, it's something we take in a cold that helps to clear the airways. And he took 3 capsules. I think he was 14, and he went, whoop, one just burst, Mum. Then a few minutes later, he went, oh, there goes another. He felt them burst in his stomach. But remember, they will not hurt. Never causes a lesion, meaning it will never cause a wound. So it is a remarkable herb. And I have known people, especially elderly people or people with diabetes, wounds that won't heal. Ulcers, usually on their shin area, because not a lot of blood supply to that area, because the blood's the life. Leviticus 17:11, the Bible says the life of the flesh is in the blood. And remember I said if there's an infection, maybe fresh blood needs to be brought in, old blood out. So let's just have a look at why the blood is the life of the flesh. The blood contains your internal army, the white blood cells, which we're going to explore later. And the red blood cells, basically the carriers of oxygen, the most vital element needed for life. They are the carriers of nutrients. And for our body to heal, it needs basic building materials, which we supply by the food that we're eating. And water carries the water. We are the ones that choose how much oxygen by the way we're breathing and the air we're breathing. We're the one that chooses the life of the flesh by the food we're eating. Devitalized food, you're not going to build a very good house. When I was in Germany a few months ago. So many of their houses they renovate because they were so well built. So well built 100, 200 years ago. They're still standing. And so they renovate them because they're so solid. In fact, I heard they reckon that a lot of the new houses are falling down before the old houses. Chipboard and nasty cheap building material. Don't give your body cheap building material. Go for the best. Go for organic. Choose. And I think out here in the country you've got quite a few Amish around that you can get a lot of homegrown things. But also what the red blood cells do is they take away waste. And when you've got an injury, the blood often tends to sit or pool in an area. And so moving that is important. And how it's moved, nurses used to learn hydrotherapy. When I was in Singapore 12 years ago, I met an 80-year-old lady who was trained in hydrotherapy in her 20s as a nurse. I've got their textbook. It's Abbott's Hydrotherapy for Nurses. What a wonderful thing if you could go into a hospital today and they only did water therapies and herbs. But I think you'll understand me. I think a lot of you are country people. The world's gone crazy over safety. Is that right? Safety. People say, but is it safe? I tell you, what they inject into newborn babies' arms, that is not safe. Amen. I'll tell you what's safe. Cayenne pepper is totally safe. It's very safe. And what I found with my children, my grandchildren, you get them used to cane at a young age. Put it on their toast, put avocado on top, tomato, calms it down a little bit. And it's surprising what they will take. So I wanted to also go back to strep throat. So if the mother's told, if you don't give the little one antibiotics, it could go to the lungs, could go to the brain. Do you know what I say to them? I don't believe that. It's good to think that they could be wrong. They could be wrong. I'm not against doctors. Some of my best friends are doctors. I think most doctors are ethical, but the pharmaceutical company is not an ethical company. Have you looked at how many billions of dollars they pay out in fines? And actually that's only a small amount of what they make. No wonder they tried to ban me. I'm not a threat to public safety, I'm a threat to the pharmaceutical companies' income. Because our body was designed to heal itself. And if there has been a cut, yes, wash it, but the bleeding often cleanses it, and then sprinkle the cayenne pepper in it. Won't it hurt? It's already hurting. And whenever you do it, to ever hurt, especially children, smile. Even if you're crying, you've got to smile. Because if you smile when a little one's been hurt, do you know what that tells the little one? Everything's all right. I've got a friend who's Fijian. She said, the whites don't understand us, but when our child falls off the bike, we laugh. They go and they pick the child up, put them on the bike. But what does that tell the child? Everything's all right. Everything's all right. So what do you do for the strep throat? Do you know the only way it could go to the lungs or the head if the child is living on refined sugar and not drinking any water? See, the blood's the healer. You've got to make sure that the blood is supplied with the good stuff. And we live in a body that can heal itself. There is no need for antibiotics. I'm not against antibiotics. They should be kept as life-saving, But the reason why we didn't need to use antibiotics because we nipped everything in the bud. We didn't watch that ingrown toenail. Well, that's not a toenail, that's a finger. We didn't watch that splinter that we couldn't get out. We didn't watch it get redder and redder, and the red line goes down. No. As soon as it happens, we put a grated potato poultice on. I think it's a bit hard to put a potato in your first aid kit, but it's in your kitchen cupboard. But if we're travelling, if we're going away for a weekend camp, we've got potatoes because we're going to cook them in the coals anyway. But potato is very good at reducing inflammation, at pulling the inflammation out. Potatoes also, we've used it many times on treading on rusty nails. And it keeps that wound open and clean until the wound is healed. My son trod on he stubbed his toe with a big splinter, about as long as a matchstick, a little matchstick, and too wide. And he's limping for weeks. And it was an old, you know, we call them sleepers, railway lines, the wood they put. I don't know what you call that, but we call them sleepers. Well, when they're going to replace the sleepers, many people buy the old sleepers and they'll landscape around their pool. Well, that railway ties. Right. Anyway, he stubbed his toe and this big hunk went in his foot. We just grated potato every night, grated potato. It took a couple of weeks because it was quite deep, and then it just came out. That foot was as clean as a whistle. How old was that piece of wood? Yeah. But the potato just helped to keep it clean, helped to keep it open till eventually it came out.
What about salting in that
Salt?
situation?
Absolutely. Now the best salt, because seawater is a great healer. Seawater contains 92 minerals, and it's called an isotonic solution because that's the exact same mineral balance and proportion as is found in the body. So cleaning with salt water, how many people have forgotten that one? Salt water is a wonderful cleaner. People talk about disinfectant, antiseptics. I don't use any of that stuff because I want to know why it's there. I want to know why that pus is there. It just needs a grated potato to pull it out. But cleaning with seawater, so if you're not near, are you near the sea? No, if you're not near the sea, you can make seawater, a teaspoon of salt to a cup of water. But it must be the Celtic or the Baja salt because they contain 82 minerals. That's very close. Baja, which is B-A-J-A. They're both hand-harvested sea salts. So they're the salts. So first aid kit, yes, cayenne pepper, but something else. I talked about wounds that don't heal very well. You can sprinkle cayenne pepper in there. Now, they won't feel a thing because one of the reasons it's not healing is the blood supply is so poor. If I had a wound in there and you put cayenne pepper in it, I'd probably jump because my blood supply is good. Why is my blood supply good? Because I exercise every day. But often elderly people don't, and the blood supply is quite bad to that area. You sprinkle cayenne pepper in, but there's another herb that I add to it for an ulcer, and that's golden seal. Golden seal, it's called king of tonics to all mucous membranes. So golden seal can be used for a urinary tract infection. Golden seal can be used as a snuff for sinus problems. Golden seal can be made into a tea and you can wash the eye with it. Golden seal can be mixed with other herbs to help heal irritable bowel, and we'll be looking at that in more detail later in the week. And if someone has a wound that's not healing, an ulcer on the leg, whether that be the diabetic or an elderly person, you can make a mix of 50% golden seal powder, 50% cayenne pepper, and you can sprinkle that into the wound. But in the wound, put seawater on it, put it in the sunshine. We've forgotten the wonders of sunshine. Seawater and sunshine will just about heal any wound. What if the flies come? Shoo them away. No, you don't want the flies on there. Although, did you know that in the war, when a man had a very bad wound, they would let the blowflies land their maggots on that wound, and the maggots would clean it up. Have you heard that one? Yes. Yeah, because they only eat filth. They don't eat the live flesh. Now, I'm not saying that that's a natural remedy that you can use, but I'll leave it up to you. Maybe if you've got nothing else, if you don't have seawater. But just seawater can clean a wound out nicely. Say the ulcer, clean it out with seawater, put it in the sunshine, and sprinkle the golden seal and cayenne pepper on it, and we find that that helps to heal. Now, the reason why the cayenne pepper in that wound is helping to heal, because remember what cayenne pepper is, it's a blood stimulant. And anything that stimulates blood to an area is increasing healing in that area. I always like to know why it works. Back to golden seal. Golden seal, again, it's called king of tonics to all mucous membranes. So you've got mucous membranes in the eye, you've got mucous membranes in your sinus, you've got mucous membranes in your bladder, and that's why it's very good for urinary tract infection. It can help to heal a stomach ulcer, and also in the colon if it's inflamed and raw. It will help to heal. But something else that it's become popular for, it's antimicrobial. So it's antibacterial, it's even anti-staphylococcic, and you know medicine has no answer for golden staph. But God does, it's called golden seal. It's anti-staphylococcic. So it's a remarkable herb. It is very expensive, but you do not need very much. And you can get it in a fine powder. That is another herb that I travel with. I travel with cayenne pepper, I travel with Celtic or Baja salt, and I travel with golden seal. Yes?
So I was born asthmatic, and last year I almost died of pneumonia. And I forage with, I have a group of foragers that I forage with, and we have an herb that grows around here wild called mullein.
Mullen's very good for lungs. Yes, that's good. So you know what to go back to. And in my book, Sustain Me, I have a chapter on respiratory where I look at how you can help conquer asthma. But mullein is very good for that. So I like to have a little bit of golden seal in my first aid kit. I also like to have cayenne pepper in my first aid kit. I like to have a little bit of salt so you can make up your seawater if you need it. But something else that I think should be in every first aid kit, and I saw there's a lady out there that is selling little first aid kit zipper, and she's got something else in there. She's got cayenne pepper in capsule form, but I would have the cayenne pepper loose too. You could open a capsule and pour it into a wound. Now obviously there might be a time when a wound may need stitches. I certainly acknowledge that. But then you'd of course bind it together. But I have actually done that with my children when Emma was chopping the wood with them. Little tomahawk, and someone screamed out and the tomahawk came down on her hand. We didn't take it to hospital. We actually just bound it together. Just clean it out. You might sprinkle a bit of golden seal, you might sprinkle cayenne, and we bound it together. And we made like a stint, because every time she bent her hand it would have opened. Necessity is the mother of invention. And I always believe that God will give you wisdom in the situation. And we've got something else that God gave us. It's called common sense. It's not very common today, is common sense. And what is in 3 different forms in that little first aid kit is charcoal. Now, why is charcoal so popular, so effective? It's because it absorbs But not only does it absorb, because I talked about, no, I think that's a B, because I talked about potato and its ability to absorb and draw, but this does something else which makes it stand out on its own. It neutralises poisons. Nothing else will do that. It neutralises poison. And the ability of charcoal to absorb and neutralise poison means it's the only product that you can give this word to. It's adsorb. An adsorb is referring to the fact that charcoal absorbs and it neutralises poisons. And because it absorbs and neutralises poisons, NASA use it in outer space to filter water. They also use it in outer space to filter the air there. In hospitals, they use charcoal to filter the blood for dialysis. And if someone has just taken an overdose and they get rushed to emergency, they give them charcoal. And the reason they give them charcoal is as soon as the charcoal's in, it absorbs and neutralises the poison. Now it's safe. They can wait for it to come out the other end because it cannot hurt because it's absorbed and it's neutralised the poison. So understanding how it works and why it works is important for you to know where to apply it. So yes?
I have two questions. For the potato, is it important to shred it and put it in a cloth for like the juice, or is it okay to cut it and just rub it on? And then also for the charcoal, is that what you then would recommend for doing cleanses?
So with the potato, it's the juice that's having the effect, and that's why grating it means more juice can come out. And putting it in a cloth, and that's something that I advise for every first aid kit. You have some cloths, and these need to be out of natural fibre. I always say when your 15-year-old boy puts his leg through the sheet, perfect. It's thin, old, soft, and very good to make a poultice with. Because for the potato, you would grate the potato. Maybe if someone's trodden on a rusty nail, absolutely clean it. And then you grate the potato and you'd put for a bottom of a foot, maybe a teaspoon or two. And then you fold the cloth over. Right side, left side, top, bottom. And now you've got a little package, and that package is about this big, because there's nothing worse than trying to put the potato on and then the potato falls everywhere and goes through the bed and through the socks. But in a package, it's contained, and behind that is a little square of plastic. And what the plastic does is it insulates the poultice, and it also protects the clothing. And it also protects the air getting to it and chilling it. Then you'd bandage that up. And by the time you've folded it over, turned it around, you see the juice. It's sort of stained almost with the juice. So your first aid kit, I would have at least six cloths. And that's about the size. And also, I would have 6 little plastic squares. What did they use before plastic? Wool. And if you're a seamstress and have got wool squares handy, you could certainly do that. And of course, what's part of every first aid kit is bandages. Band-aid. I think you call them ACE, is that right? Stretch bandages. Have a few bandages. So back to the charcoal. You can use it internally for vomiting, for diarrhea. If someone's been poisoned, maybe they've eaten some berries or something they shouldn't. I noticed in the little first aid kit the lady has out there, she has some charcoal tablets. I always travel with charcoal tablets. it absorbs and neutralises poison. So if someone's suffering from food poisoning or, again, taken anything in that's poison, the charcoal tablets is easy to take. But what you can also use the charcoal for, and that is external. Snake bite, spider bite, wasp bite, bee sting, and any of those, it will absorb and neutralise the poison. But when you mix charcoal with water, it's like mixing dirt and water. So it doesn't mix very well. So it's a great idea in your first aid kit to not only have charcoal powder, but also have some psyllium. I think there's a H there, is that right? Psyllium husks. Because when you put psyllium husks with water, it goes like a soft jelly. So it's just holds it there. So it's very handy for that. Yeah, you'd want water. You put water with it till it goes like a soft gel, and you could put it in a poultice like that and wrap it over, and you'll find the juices coming out because the juice is what's going to absorb. Or if you had it in like a soft gel, you just put it straight on the wound. It's quite incredible how quickly the pain goes once the charcoal's on. So the charcoal can be used internally, it can be used externally. So that can be used for a wide range. What about burns? Now, I think the most effective for burns is aloe vera, but you may not have aloe vera if you're camping or where you might be. So the next best thing is Epsom salts. So that's easy to put in a first aid kit. And what you do is you create an Epsom salts solution. And how you create an Epsom salt solution is this. Epsom salts is magnesium sulfate, and magnesium is a water-hungry molecule. So if you have a little jar and you've got maybe half a cup of water in there, and you put a big teaspoon of Epsom salts in, it'll dissolve. Then you put another spoonful in and it'll dissolve, and maybe by the third spoon it's not dissolving anymore, it's a saturated solution now. And what you can do with a burn, you can get your cloths and put them in, not so they're dripping, but so they're very moist, and put that on a burn. And when you put that on a burn, it brings relief, but it also helps with the healing. Because when there's raw flesh with the burn, you've often lost magnesium, and it helps to replace it. I remember my husband was whippersnippering. Now, I don't think you call it a whippersnipper. Weed whacker. Yeah, we call it whippersnipper. Anyway, he burned his finger, and he came in and, finger. So I just dipped cloths in, maybe several layers. Again, it's not quite dripping, but it's not dry. You want it fairly moist. And then just cover that in plastic and put the tape on. And whenever I do something like that, I always pray, say, Father, please bless this. Well, he went out and whippersnippered for the rest of the afternoon. When you put aloe vera on it, it can tingle quite badly, but it'll eventually ease. But if you do have access to aloe vera, it is the best. I think every home should have a plant, because my understanding is you get snow here, yeah? So you can't grow it outside, but you can grow it inside. So if you have, someone's got a burn, you cut the leaf like this. So now you've got two sides. And of course, you cut off all the barbs, but you leave the skin on. If you scrape out the flesh and put it on the burn, it will be helpful, but the edges dry out. And if the edges dry out, when you go to change it, when you try and take it off, it rips the skin. But if you keep the skin intact, it will never dry out. So I've done it many times. One lady, they wanted to do, boiling water had fallen on her arm, and the skin was just falling off. She went to the emergency. They wanted her to go to hospital down in Sydney, so that's 5 hours away. And the doctor said, we're going to have to do a skin graft on that, and you may not have the full use of the arm because there was a section where it was down to raw flesh. Anyway, she's got 2 little boys who are 9 months old, twins, and a little boy that's 5, and what do you do? So she rang a friend and said, Barbara can help. So I saw her the next day, and my friend has got, it's probably nearly as big as this area here, aloe vera. We don't get snow. Honey, somewhat, but I find nothing is as good as the aloe vera. Aloe vera contains a growth stimulant, and that growth stimulant stimulates rapid healing. And the husband was there with his arms crossed. He wasn't happy about her coming to see me. He wanted to go down to Sydney because the doctor said she would never use her arm again. She didn't want to do any of that. So we had a few people there because that aloe vera slides. So we had a few people holding it. And we just did it like a jigsaw over her whole arm. And then we wrapped, you call it cling wrap. So the cling wrap wasn't touching her skin, but it was covering that. It wasn't burnt there, you just put the aloe vera there anyway. And then I said, and then bandaged it on. And I said, and leave it for 24 hours. Because you will find, and I'm sure every nurse can testify, that they often with wounds, they don't change them for 24 hours. Because every time you change the wound, you're interfering with the cell's healing. And again, we prayed, and the husband was not happy. I didn't hear anything else. I always take no news as good news. Anyway, 6 months later, I visited my local chiropractor, and when I opened the door, this lady and her husband walked out. And both their faces lit up, and she pulled her jumper up. She said, look. There was hardly a mark. And yet she had raw flesh there that they said would need a skin graft. And that's a whole nother. How nice when you can handle it yourself. So the aloe vera is powerful. It is number 1 for burns. But we may not have it. So I like to have a few things up my sleeve, but we've found that the Epsom salt's very, very effective. Have I lost my voice? Yeah. You can hear it a bit. Testing 1, 2, 3. I think I'm just going in and out a bit, yeah?
How long would you do that for that woman especially? How many days would you?
Well, you just watch your body's response. You just change it every 24 hours until looking good, not hurting anymore. So you're watching the body's response. And I guess much depends on how serious the wound is. But we've just always dealt with these things ourselves at home. But when I broke my arm 2 years ago, and the x-ray showed that the radius was broken and like this, well, I needed the skill of the orthopaedic surgeon. And what told me I needed more than a poultice was the pain was just incredible. I tell you that to show you there may be a time, and that's why to listen and watch the body's response. I think I've got voice again now. You're watching your body's response, and what's the body's response? If you're getting some relief, if it's certainly helping. So decrease in pain. So charcoal is a must. I think charcoal tablets, charcoal powder, and also the psyllium husks to mix with it. Again, spider. I'm going to change batteries. Talk loud. So I think your basics also in your first aid kit are a little bowl or plastic cup to mix in. You've usually got water. Green light helps. Yeah. And tweezers is good, a little spoon, little scissors, tape, all of that is very important. Yes?
Do you ever recommend aloe vera for internal?
Yes, I do recommend aloe vera for internal. Just one note with aloe vera, you'll notice that lining the skin, there's a yellow slime. So what we do at Misty Mountain is we've got a lot of aloe vera. We've got thousands of plants. It's finding out where it's happy, and we found out where it's happy, so we've got a lot. What our staff do, thank you, what our staff do is every afternoon at 4 o'clock they go and cut a couple of aloe vera big leaves, and then they sit that in a glass jar for 1 hour. And in 1 hour, all the yellow slime has oozed out, and then they cut the bottom off, wash it, and then they just cut it like this, skin and all, and put it into a big glass jar full of water. So maybe 2 leaves this big will go into 2 litres, or you say 2 quarts, and then the next morning, the staff pour it for our guests for their morning drink. Now, aloe vera is a natural probiotic. Aloe vera has B12 in it, and aloe vera is very rich in slimy mucilage, which we know, but that will coat, soothe, and heal the lining of the gastrointestinal tract. So the aloe vera is a remarkable plant. It's probably the first plant that I planted in my house when I moved to my house 12 years ago, was aloe vera. And that's why I say I think every home should have a pot, because it's good inside and outside. But for a first aid kit, if you've gone camping, the Epsom salts is great. All you need is a little maybe jar or cup to mix it till it's saturated, and that saturated can help. My eldest daughter was ironing one day, sitting down ironing, and one of the kids screamed and she got a shock and the iron fell on her leg. She lives in Minnesota, so they didn't have aloe vera, but she just did the Epsom salts. Now, you could see the shape of the iron, you could see the holes where the steam came out. And she just laid it on, put plastic over it and bandaged it on. Today, there's hardly a mark. If you look at it closely, you can see where the steam holes came out, a little bit of white, but no scar tissue. And often burning leaves terrible scar tissue. So there's the basics for your first aid kit. Another, I think, little bottle, hydrogen peroxide. And hydrogen peroxide is very good at cleaning out a wound.
And the medical profession says it damages tissue.
Yeah, the medical profession says it damages tissue, but hydrogen peroxide's been used for hundreds of years. And I've got a friend, and she's a surgeon, and she says we clean wounds with it. She said we had a young guy come in who'd been in a motorbike accident and slidden along, so he just was grazed, his whole side. And she said we put him under general anaesthetic, got a scrubbing brush and hydrogen peroxide. Oh, there is a time for a general anaesthetic. But the hydrogen peroxide cleans it out very nicely. The other herb is comfrey. Comfrey and aloe vera are 2 herbs that contain growth stimulants. Now, I guess it's not easy to have it in your first aid kit unless it's in a salve or a cream. but that's probably more a long-term thing. Whereas something that you need something quickly, the Epsom salts for the burns, the hydrogen peroxide to clean, make your own salt, charcoal powder. So they're basics, I think, for the first aid kit. With your bandages, I haven't written all the basics. I think most people know them. Scissors and tweezers. When my children were young, I homeschooled them. They all had their own first aid kit. And we went and got, you know, that hard plastic little lunchbox, and they had their little bottles, and it's great to teach the children all the simple things that they can do. With Band-Aids, I'm not a real fan of Band-Aids. They just about rip your skin apart when you take them off, but you can get hypoallergic. So hypoallergic Band-Aids, they have a really nice soft because they're designed for people with very sensitive skin. Yes? Well, when you're using it for a poultice, it's barely touching you, but you can get plastic bags made out of starch, and of course they're superior, but they do deteriorate quickly because they're biodegradable. But what some people will do, they'll have the plastic, and then they'll have a square of wool, and then they'll have the poultice maybe there. So that also can be used.
What is comfrey?
Comfrey is a plant, and does anyone here know comfrey? This lady's got 60 plants of it. I think every home should have comfrey because it's a remarkable healing herb, but I do know it's quite easy to get comfrey salve or comfrey cream. That's a handy one. That's why I mentioned it for the first aid kit. And that's where it is remarkable in that it causes massive cell growth, meaning in the bone, its nickname is knit bone. So whether it be skin, whether it be tendon, whether it be ligament. So when I broke my arm, and again I'm thankful for the orthopaedic surgeon's skill to pull it back into place, but when they looked at it under the x-ray, the orthopaedic surgeon said, pretty good. Do you know what that tells me? It's not perfect, but that's enough for me. Because when I went home, I cut half the cast off so I could poultice it, and I just did comfrey. I just did comfrey for 2 hours every day. And to me, not everyone likes this, but I'm from the bush, this is just what we do. I just put the leaf in my mouth and chew it, and then spit it out and shove it on there and bandage it up. So when I went to have that hand x-rayed after 4 weeks, they wanted to see it after 4 weeks because it wasn't perfect. And they looked at the x-ray, they looked at me, they looked at my date of birth, and they looked at the date that it happened. They couldn't believe it. In 4 weeks it had healed. That's a total break, total out of alignment. Now, I think there's a few reasons. I think the comfrey helped, but do you know what else I think helped? It's because of the way I live. It's because of the way I eat. It's because of the way I drink. It's because I go to bed early. Remember, when you go to bed early, you increase the healing. I think it is all that. See, it's not the odd day you do it or the odd day you don't. It's what you do every day that determines the health status of your body. But you know what I did underestimate? When the plaster came up, I just couldn't move my arm. And that, you see, my body flew up in the air and slammed down on this huge rock. So that poor hand was between a rock and my body. I'm glad I'm 100 pounds and not 200 pounds, or it might have been smashed to smithereens. But as you see that it totally works now, and what really helped with that was castor oil. But castor oil, you certainly can have castor oil in the first aid kit, and I think why castor oil is good in the first aid kit is if something gets in your eye. In fact, I was talking to an old bushman many years ago, and he said if he's out in the bush and something gets in his eye, he puts castor oil in it. And castor oil then almost surrounds it and helps to pull it out of the eye. But for my hand to get full use, I just wore the castor oil compress every night for 6 months. Got that? Took a while. Took a long time, but I have total use of it now. Castor oil penetrates deeper than any other oil, and wherever it penetrates, it's able to break up congestion, adhesions. So I didn't first of all put it in the first aid kit because it's more of a long-term use that you would use it for. But quick term, it can be great for eye, for getting things in the eye. Yes?
Does comfrey have a limit as to how long you can use it? I read something about you can use it for a week and then don't use it again.
Oh yeah, they'll tell you that you can only use Golden Seal for a week, and they'll tell you can only use comfrey for a week, but you know, the princes often get it wrong. And what they often do is they go over the top with safety. That's why I say don't start me on safety. You know what they do for people with glaucoma? Put a needle in their eye. Don't let anyone put a needle in your eye. We put too much trust and faith in these systems. So when my husband had his eye tested, they said, oh, you've got pressure glaucoma, you'll have to see the specialist. And Michael said, nah. And the guy followed him and said, excuse me, sir, you have to see the specialist? Michael said, no. Got to the door and the guy saying, do you want to go blind? And Michael said, no. It's 3 years later and he's not blind. Do you know, sometimes they get it wrong. That's what you have to remember. Don't make any decision on fear. But the castor oil in the eye, one lady said, is it safe? I said, don't start me on safety. It's been used in the eye for thousands of years.
On the eyeball itself?
Righto, right in. In fact, what you can do is you can put it in the eye, you can wipe it across the eye, because it still will penetrate in. Do you know the beauty of all this is if it hasn't worked, you haven't hurt yourself. But what I have found is that they're the best first aid kits, and they do help. Most pain is due to inflammation. And if you can get inflammation down, you can get pain down.
Would there be any benefit to like aloe vera gel, like the bottle of it?
Do you know, it wouldn't hurt. It wouldn't hurt. A lot of aloe vera gels are sometimes about 99% aloe. So yeah, that's fairly good. And remember, a first aid kit is dealing with crises. So this is crisis management, but which, you know, hopefully that doesn't happen to us very much, is the crisis. Yes?
Will the comfrey cream help with like meniscus tears?
With?
Meniscus tears or...
Yeah, meniscus tears. Now when you realise what it is and what it does, it's got a growth stimulant. So it'll stimulate rapid healing in cartilage, in tendon, in ligament, in bone, in meniscus, anywhere it'll stimulate rapid healing. Comfrey is anti-inflammatory. Comfrey contains the growth stimulant, and comfrey also has a lubricant, so it's very good around joints. But what you've got to do if you've got a torn meniscus, you've got to listen, and if you're on your feet too much, if you walk too much, as soon as it starts to hurt, you've got to listen. You've got to listen because pain is your friend. Pain has a purpose, and pain is a signal. It's telling you stop, or it's telling you move. So that's the important part, is listening, and also watching the body's response. So we're going to have a nice big break now. It's time for a break. I'll just take one more question, yes?
In the beginning of this session, you had mentioned a book about herbs.
Yes, it's called Back to Eden by Jethro Kloss. Jethro Kloss. So thank you, and this afternoon we're looking at detox. Thank you. Thank you.